Hey everyone, today I would like to announce my departure from our Cold War server. I would like to start with a retrospective on the server, why I am leaving, and what next steps look like for the server. This was a video that I actually was really looking forward to making, and I'm excited to unpack things. Before people rush to conclusions, let me first say that I'm going to keep playing Sims and the YouTube channel will continue. I will just be stepping away from the management of the server. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay, so if you're into that, please subscribe. My relationship with DCS has always been hot and cold. I have floated in and out of the game since the very beginning with Lomac. With a disgusting amount of hours spent in IL2 during COVID, I felt like I wanted to change things up. My buddy Tempest is actually the big reason why I got sucked back into DCS. The thing is that while DCS looked like it was accelerating, it did not really have a server that I really liked. If I had to associate my identity with any game, it wouldn't be any of the current games, but rather World War II Online. This was the best sim I have ever played, and I have always felt like a refugee looking for a new home, to chase the high that game gave me. So with this in mind, an idea came up to try to make a server in DCS where we could try to build things around a campaign. A lot of ideas were thrown around, and other collaborators and other projects were considered, but what came out was actually a concept from IL2. Along with that, and my passion for World War II really made me appreciate Cold War. Playing on Alpin's Cold War server made me think that this was a really slept on era, but no one outside of a few people were playing it. I thought it would be good to follow the proven track record of the IL2 community, because in my mind it is the most sophisticated multiplayer online community, and bring the finished virtual pilot server over into DCS. We really tried to keep the concept as similar as possible, to the point where I even asked the Finnish devs if we could bring their concept into DCS. In my eyes, the Finnish server was the best server across the entire flight sim genre. And it's not a surprise that they were also really influenced by World War II Online. Our goal was to have 20 concurrent players. We were full within the first hour, and the server has pretty much always stayed populated and been one of the top servers since then. From there to now, most of you know the story. It is a little unreal with how large the server got. The victory lap that I would like to take before I air out my grievances are the following. 1. We correctly identified that Cold War was not just part of the sim, but a core part of it, and ECW made it viable at all hours in the day. Before ECW, Cold War was really only populated by a handful of people, and it rarely got any attention by the majority of the community. It was really only playable a few hours out of the week during Euro hours. Now it's different. ECW made it be able to play Cold War at any hour of the day in a PvP environment. 2. We were able to show the community that context is important. Before ECW, basically every major server outside of the World War II servers had the Hornet in it. We were able to show that you can ignore the most popular modules and still have a really busy server. Let me say that one more time. ECW has been one of the most popular servers since launch, while actively rejecting the most popular mechanics and modules in the game. The F-18 and F-16 were ignored. We embraced analog controls and announced our intention to ignore the Apache and the Strike-U, and the server continued. And like I said, we even ignored the really popular mechanics like slinging. Other servers are different. They are in a race to support whatever module came to the game, and that was something we decided we were not going to do. The context of the server, or the vibe that we were trying to maintain, was more important than any one module. If a module was announced, our stance would be to evaluate it first. If it was not up to snuff, or if it did not add to the server, we turned it down. If you make interesting gameplay, then the gameplay can sustain people's interest. Stuffing every module into a server, in my opinion, is just relying on shallow content. Modules are not interesting. Gameplay is. You need to give a reason for these modules to exist. 3. We tried to approach the server like its own game. We had patch notes, patch videos, trailers, announcing new features, and even versioning numbers. This in my mind was not normal, and people were able to come with us on a ride, and we're really looking forward to our patches, which actually made me really happy. 4. The server was able to maintain so much of a splash that it transcended DCS. This is one of the things that most surprised me, and in a way is probably the thing that impacts me personally the most. I regularly will enter non-DCS gaming communities, and people recognize me as that Cold War guy from DCS, which I have always found very ironic because I'm more of a World War II guy, but interesting nonetheless. The server became so large that it was able to pull people from other games and gave them a reason to come to DCS. One of the original analysis we did on the server showed that there was a high propensity that people came from single player or from outside of DCS to DCS multiplayer, and this was because of the server, which is really neat and honestly a good thing for Eagle Dynamics to take note of. While multiplayer may only be 10% of the total player base, it has an outsized influence. Multiplayer definitely generates more than 10% of the content, and content attracts new players. In short, multiplayer is Gucci, single player is Walmart. Strong multiplayer communities will be a canvas for content to be created on, which will then in turn attract more players, and it is a flywheel. All in all, we had a really big impact. Fan of the server or not, these numbers cannot be denied. They must be understood. It is pretty surprising to see how many people latched onto the server, because it was not what we originally set out to do. But if you're going to swing, you should swing for the fences, and we did knock it out of the park. As the server continued to gain popularity, so did the responsibility, and this is where I began to pull the veil back on what running a large server is like in DCS, because this server is one of the largest time sucks I have ever committed to. Myself and our staff have collectively put thousands of hours into the server, and I want to explain how this is possible. Understanding this will make you understand why no one on the server staff wanted to take over the server when I said I had to exit due to time constraints. Let's talk about how the development plays out in the server. The easiest way to visualize it is imagining trying to have a party. You must curate the experience for your guests. You must prepare the home they will party in, and while you're curating and building, you have to be mindful of the foundation that your house sits on. This foundation is DCS, and it is not really a stable foundation. DCS is evolving. Every patch, things change. It's a complex game. DCS has to continue to develop, and as they do things, naturally things break along the way, and that requires maintenance. There is no real way around it, because DCS has to continue to flesh out their game. So while players look forward to patches, as a server admin, I saw patches as potential hot potatoes. DCS operates around Moscow time, not in my New York City time zone. So these patches that drop early in the workday make for a really stressful period. Will the server blow up or not with the patch? We never really knew for sure. I'm one of the 2 people that I know of that has beta tested for both IL2 and DCS. And I have to say in general, DCS does a better job of giving servers early visibility of what is to come, so servers can prepare. With that said, IL2 is really stable, and bugs don't really blow up servers in that game. So my point here is to not dig at ED. My point here is to just give a small glimpse into the time that gets soaked up. Players are only aware of the bugs that hit the public version of the game. In the background, the silent testers are testing and dealing with the bugs in the closed beta version of the game. We have to test before things go live, so we can find any bugs. If we miss any, then we all deal with the issues. ED giving servers early visibility was a great thing. It really helped, but it really added time because we were on the hook to find things. We had to maintain a separate version of the server to test. The general instability of the platform, combined with COVID ending and me returning to the office, has made the server incompatible with my schedule. Pretty much, for the last 3 years, I would estimate that I have put at least 15 hours into the server per week, sometimes more. It would ebb and flow based on bugs, and it really quickly felt like a job. It became exhausting. Additionally, I would like to say something that I think is really important. It takes more time to generate content in DCS than it does to consume it. ECW missions would take 2 months to create, and it would be lapped up almost immediately. New features to properly scope them, build them, test them, and deploy them would take longer than it would for players to consume it. I'm not sure what the solution is. DCS, after all, does have the best mission editor out of all the current games, but how much time it takes combined with the general instability of the platform makes what players perceive as features really be a list of things to potentially break from an admin perspective. This is probably why most servers start to plateau with their development after some time. Eventually, the risk is not worth it to add more features. This is something that I have discussed at great length with other servers. I'm not sure what the solution is, but in summary, there is a lot of stress and required time when running a 24/7 server. To some degree, it is my fault because I am competitive and I like to make sure things are perceived as running well. As a side note, I would like to give a special shout out to Vitaly at ED. He is a quiet one and many do not know him, and he will probably be annoyed that I'm mentioning him here because he likes to fly under the radar. But he was by far the most helpful person at ED. He is a massive supporter of multiplayer, and his care and attention made the server possible. I genuinely and really genuinely mean this, because without him, the server would have ran into a lot of problems, and we may have ended up giving up before getting going. So thank you, Vitaly. I'm going to keep this part short, but this is the most personal part. In short, I am really busy. I live in New York City and work at a major advertiser that has global scale. Things happen in random countries and we have to shift things. People who play with me know that half the time when I'm flying to Target, I'm all tab writing work emails. I am almost never not working. Things were intense but fairly manageable during COVID because I had a smaller role back then and because we were all working from home. Now I've continued to mature in my career and companies are pulling people back into the office. The time is starting to evaporate even faster. With commuting to and from work and having in-person work events, the amount of days where I don't even turn on my home computer is starting to become more common. The issue is that as the server has continued to be buzzing at all hours of the day, I'm getting constantly tagged in for issues. Server moderation issues, server bugs, restarts, etc. It is an odd responsibility of having a 24/7 server. For basically the last 3 years, I have had to make it a point to check Discord throughout the day to make sure things are not an issue. Seeing a friend that I have not seen in over a year, yeah, the server is 24/7. I'd have a feeling in the back of my head that I had to check Discord real fast to make sure things were fine. And this is the thing that might be hard to really understand. With tens and thousands of players, things happen. The time to manage the community, some weeks where the biggest time sucks. I would like to take a minute to also say one last FU to the players that caused me grief over the last few years. Some people in particular were incredibly exhausting. In general, I have always felt really guilty banning people and have tried to give second chances, with the exception to really bad things like racism. These accounts are expensive and there really isn't a lot of populated Cold War options for PvP. So I felt bad banning people. If I banned you from the server, I basically was banning you from PvP Cold War. I actually got a lot of well-deserved flack from the staff because they thought I was being too lenient and they were right. And this was my biggest failure when running the server. I wish I would have banned the troublemakers faster. It is crazy to me how much better the Discord and server became once we banned the handful of rotten apples. So for the intolerables that were the worst of the worst, my last message to you is that this is your last chance. The DCS server admins maintain a global ban list, and some of the things that some of you did could have landed you on that list. And I, more or less, left that option off the table. So while I'm calling you out here, just know that your access to many servers exists because I felt bad for you. So in summary, I wanted to maintain a high quality server, but my schedule does not allow it because the platform it sits on needs a lot of attention, and the community became a giant one that required a lot of time. So in short, the server has to change hands. When I told the staff I was too busy to run the server, I asked them who wanted to take over. I said anyone could take it over and spin it off into a new Discord, and to do what they want with it. I'm not precious. The entire staff said they were all too busy to be able to quarterback it. Surprise, we're all really busy. So our search went wider. I asked the other server hosts, and most were unwilling to take it on, and some were. And wanting to make sure the server stays durable, it can be maintained, I thought the most prudent thing to do was to give it some more official support. I did approach ED, and they were eager to want to help the server find a new home, but are unable to do it themselves. So my search ended up with the third-party module makers, and I'm happy to announce that Heatblur has decided that they will take up the server. And their point of view on it is to not change up the server, but more to preserve it. And they are even willing to combine their resources with some of the existing server staff, so there's a continuation in the project. Let me remind you that some of the Heatblur staff has experience in running multiplayer servers, as some of them used to run the 104th. The ownership of the server will move from me to Heatblur by July 1st. There will be no need for server Patreon donors anymore, as Heatblur will be able to maintain the server themselves. Additionally, the official Discord for the server will move from my own Discord to the Heatblur one. I just want to remind everyone that my Discord community will continue. We will still be doing events in ILT 1946, BMS, and other games, including DCS. So the DCS section will still continue in my Discord, and I hope that many of you continue to participate in the community because it has been really fun lately. I want to thank Heatblur for being willing to take the server on. I think their mindset in wanting to preserve the server and not to immediately change it will allow for a good foundation to work off of, because the game will change, and with that, the server will need to change with it. So with this all said, I can now rest and just play as a player like all of you, and also make a couple different videos like some of you. I would like to thank everyone who helped, from the thoughtful players with their feedback, to the staff who dedicated their time to work on the server or to help moderate the community, the Patreon supporters who ponied up to help pay for Overlord and the server hosting costs, or viewers like you who subscribe to the channel, who left comments and helped grow the community. Thank you. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. And if you aren't subscribed, now would be a good time. With some time being freed up from the server, it will allow me to dive into some other projects. So I'm excited what other things we can populate as a community. One of the greatest things that has come out of this YouTube getting larger and the Discord with it is our ability to have the critical mass to populate any game or server that we might find interesting. So I invite you to our Discord. Thank you and have a good one.